I'll be out of your hair. One of the things that I was thinking this week is this. With this whole coronavirus thing going on, the reality, and it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks the other day, right? As I was thinking, it just kind of came to me, this past weekend was the first weekend, I think, in the history of, well, I know in the history of my life, but probably in the history of, I would almost say the country, like unless somebody can point another time, but I think it was like the first time definitely in the history of anybody who's living today, where the majority of church buildings were closed, right? The majority of church buildings were closed. And it was interesting because one of the things that came to my mind was this, that for some people, it was unnoticed. And that's really a whole other topic of discussion. But we'll I'll deal with that later. But for some people, it was unnoticed. For some people, it was, they would say, well, it's about time, right? For some people, it was unconcerning. For some people, they attributed it to faithlessness. For some people, they said, man, like we did that because it was the wisest thing to do. But I think for a lot of us, myself included, I think for the majority of us, it was just weird. You know what I mean? Like we were all online and that was cool. Like we made the best of it. But I think for the most part, it just was kind of weird. Like it felt weird that all of, not all, but the majority of the church buildings in this nation, right? Not just in this city or this state or whatever, but in the nation, the majority of church buildings in the nation were closed. And so now we have, it's all type of brand new pastors and, that people are being introduced to and all that kind of thing. But it just felt a little weird. And then I started thinking, the more comments that I started paying attention to and, hearing people talking and watching some of the live streams and, that kind of thing. One of the things I thought to myself as I was taking in all this information is that it seems as though all of us, for instance, most of us would probably say, man, Corona, I'm over it. You know what I mean? Like, and kind of what we're doing. And I think we as Christians, we're like this too. We're kind of waiting for this thing to be over so we can go back to normal, right? That's kind of how it feels. Like, I just can't wait for this to be over so we can go back to normal. And the more I thought about it, I thought, man, I think our normal is the problem. Honestly. Right? Like I think, for instance, let me give you an example. If you go back to 2016, Donald Trump ascended to the presidency of the United States, and he ascended to the presidency of the United States with a particular slogan, right? We know it as MAGA, Make America Great Again. That was his slogan. And for many of us who are African Americans and other minorities, whether you're African American, Asian American, Mexican American, across the board, for many of us, man, we knew it was a problem as soon as we heard that slogan. And truth be told, we knew it was a problem when we heard the slogan because the slogan does not resonate. It doesn't hit the same way with minorities than it does with others who are of more European descent. And I'm gonna tell you, and let me explain it just a little bit. Now, here's what I don't want you to do. Don't make my video a political or a racial video. That's not what this is about. I need you to understand what I'm saying in order to make a larger point. But the whole Make America Great Again, it simply means this. Like Donald has a thought or an idea of greatness in his mind. That doesn't resonate with me, definitely, and with a lot of other people that I know, millions of people. It does not resonate because his definition of greatness has to do with going backwards. It has to do with yesterday. It has to do with before. It has to do with going, like there's a sense in which he's saying we've gotten away from normal. And so make America great again, like that's another word for like, let's get back to normal. Like there's something we left and we should not have left it. And I'm telling you, for most minorities, there is no desire to go back. None. Right? Whether you are, I'm telling you, whether you are like Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, African Americans, Mexican Americans, there's no desire to go back. None. And so the whole idea and the concept of like, he would have been good if he would have said, make America great. Then we'd have been all, you know what I mean? Yeah, let's finally do that. Let's make America great. But for a lot of us, when we heard let's make America great again, the question was for a lot of us, when was America ever great? And so now that we understand that, I need you to take those eyes and I need you to focus them now on the church. Because what I'm suggesting is a lot of us are waiting to go back to normal. And I'm telling you right now, like, I don't want to go back. I don't. I don't want to go back to lazy attendance. I don't want to go back to half-hearted generosity. I don't want to go back to scared evangelism. I don't want to go back to churches that are huge, but huge on the outside and empty on the inside. Like, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to doing what we've always done the way we've always done it. I don't want to go back to catering to the few people who are in the seats and not contemporizing and making our ministry relevant to the millions of people who are being born, who are millennials or Gen Xers or Gen Zers now, or, whatever the term is. I don't know what they're going to do after Gen Z. Maybe Gen, I don't know. ZZ, I have no idea. But whatever it is, the church we have to become relevant to the people that we reach. And we can't do it doing the same old thing and going back to normal. And so my word to the church, my word to us as believers is that our normal shouldn't be normal. My hope is that whatever this, again, hate that the virus is here, and I hate that people are sick and dying. Like, that's tragic. But it ought to do something to us, because now one of the things that I'm seeing is that the church, a lot of churches are becoming so creative in how they are speaking the gospel, teaching gospel, preaching gospel. There's so many churches who refuse to catch up to modern times, and because of no other choice, listen, we got Facebook accounts now. We got YouTubes, Instagrams, Snapchats. We have all types of things going on in the church now. And we're learning how to become relevant to a new generation. And so I don't want to go back to the way that it was. The Bible says this. I was looking at this scripture and it kind of hit me. Romans 8:29, it says this: for those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the likeness of his son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. Now, I'm not going to explain the whole verse, but I do want you to hear this part, right? For those God foreknew, he also predestined, listen carefully, to be conformed to the likeness of his son, right? That's God's will for you and for me, is that we would consistently be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ, which means that we would consistently be made over to look like Jesus over and over and over again, to a greater degree, that we would never have moments or times where we are not being made to look like Jesus. So I want to challenge us, right, as believers, as Christians, while you're sitting at home, while you're told that you cannot come out to public worship, while you're being told that you have to shelter in place, and you're there with your kids, you're there with your husband or your wife, you're there with family members, and you know what I mean? It may be driving you crazy or whatever. You may be sitting at home and complaining, oh, I'm bored. You know what I mean? You're on Facebook all day or you're watching TV. Listen. Get off Facebook all day. Like, stop it. Stop paying attention to the news. If you watch too much of this news, you're going to slit your wrist. So don't do that. Here's what I need you to do. I need for you to recalibrate your mind and understand that God allowed this to happen. We don't completely understand why he allowed it to happen, but we do know some of the workings of his will in it. And some of the workings of his will in it is that through the waiting, right? Through the frustration, through the isolation, through the deprivation to a small degree, through all of it, God is at work in his people, conforming us to the image of his son. And so I want to challenge you to take advantage of that. Right? Take advantage of your downtime. All of the books that you said you wanted to read, like, start reading them. All of the things that you've ever wanted to know, like, start knowing it. Like one of the things that amazes me, like, people will complain, or I've heard people complaining, how can they tell us we can't go to church? How can they tell us, the church is not an essential part of life? Let me tell you why they're telling you that the church is not essential. Because we haven't been. We haven't been essential to our community. We haven't been, for most of us, the church, it's essential to our well-being in terms of, kind of what we feel we need. But in terms of the world, the church needs to be essential to the world so that the next time there is a shelter in place and they shut down the churches and the churches can't meet, the government has to come back and say, nah, y'all got to get back to work because we're missing all kinds of things because you guys are not doing what you've been doing. Yeah. Just like that. So I want to challenge you. Right. Some of us have been to Bible study for we've been going 5 years, 10 years. Right. And I'm telling you, I don't want to go back to people going to Bible study in and out, every Wednesday night or whenever we meet, and we still can't explain the doctrine of the Trinity. We still can't explain or defend salvation by grace through faith. We still can't, we don't even know where to find or put together 3 scriptures to explain the doctrine of the resurrection. Right? Like that we should not be hiding from Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons coming to our door. We should not be avoiding conversations with Black Hebrew Israelites or Hebrew Israelites or Brews or Israelites, however they, because they, it's a large group, so they call themselves different things. Like, we should not be running from those conversations. We should know what it is that we know and be able to talk about it and prove it, especially after all the Bible studies we've been in.
I've been changed. In the presence of the Lord, I've been free, delivered. And in your presence, Lord, I found joy, grace, and favor.
I've been changed.
and forgiven.